Today I want to talk to you about rubrics and projects. So here we got D4, LT 1 and 2 service charging systems. It's a second year project and it was just created for the students. Now some of the students heard the word rubric and they're not quite sure what we're talking about. So what I've done is I've made this tutorial to explain how to maximize your marks, get full marks by performing a assignment and getting the full value of your marks. Now that lies with the rubric. So let's go down here. You see we have a rubric here and it lays out the percentages of where you're going to get your marks. So let's go back to the report itself. Students will make a report and put all this information in. It can be created on a PowerPoint. It can be created by a written report. You can sit here and explain it to your students. You can videotape yourself doing it. It doesn't matter how you do this project, as long as it includes all this information. So some of this information is battery connections and terminals, alternator mounting, drive belt condition, tension. You'll need to check for vibration, output of the voltage, amperage, and a description of how you're going to take this thing apart or take this alternator off and put it back on. So let's go to the rubric. So the rubric is what an instructor uses to mark your project. So regardless of how you do it, they're looking for certain information. And some of the most common information that's not put on a report is the easiest stuff to do. So let's look at the first one, work practices. So work practices basically says, do you come to your work site, check to see if it's clean, check for anything that's not safe, anything that could cause problems. Do you clean up your work site, get it prepared, get your tools ready to work? So that brings in work practices, scene assessment, and then safety. Within the shop, goes without saying, you're wearing your safety glasses. If your shop requires you to wear a helmet or glasses, you're going to do that. And of course, you're wearing your safety boots. So you have to point that out. Somehow, in your assignment, you're going to point that out. You're either going to take a picture of the boots, you're going to see somebody sitting there with their glasses on working, but all those things need to be pointed out or mentioned. Now, the advantage of using a PowerPoint is you put in the pictures. So as you're doing your project, you take all these pictures, and then when you lay it out into the slides, you can add captions and say what you were doing and point out any great information that's going to get you more marks on your assignment. So work practices, scene assessment, and safety, there's three things there. And if you put two pieces of information for each of those, I'm wearing my glasses, I got my boots on, and I'm wearing gloves or hand protector. The scene was safe. We cleaned up some of the buckets and loose material on the ground. And we like to work in a clean, safe environment. That's 10%. That's your full marks. Moving to the next one, description of the visual and audible inspection. So what do you see when you look at the alternator, when you look at the system around the alternator, when you check it out, what do you see? Also, the fact that it's audible, you're going to be starting this up listening. Do you hear bearing noise? All those things are things you're going to mention. If it's nice and clean sounding, there's no flapping noises on the belt, no grinding noises, no loose alternator, say that in your report, and that will get you 10%. The next one, output voltage, how you got it. So obviously you're going to hook up your meter to your battery, get your open circuit voltage to start with, and when you start this up, you're going to see what the voltage rises to. That's what you got to explain on the PowerPoint slide of you holding the meter and looking at the battery. And that will get you full marks. There is no more to it. Amperage description. How did you get that? Did you use an inductive pickup? Did you use a magnetic attachment that shows the amperage flowing through the wire? Give a description of what you've done. Explain it clearly. Have somebody who's not in the mechanical fields to read it and see if they understand it. If they do, you got 10%. Belt tension. You're going to have to check that belt tension, and you're going to have to tell us how you check it. There's a belt tension gauge. You can pull on it, see how much stretch there is, but you're going to take a picture of it, explain that you checked the belt tension. That's easy marks. That's 10%. Alternator removal and description, we're 20%. They want to know systematically that I took the ground cable off the battery first. Then I went to the back of the alternator, took off the battery cable. The battery cable is no longer hot because you've taken the ground off. Then I'm going to remove the plug out of the alternator, pulling them back, maybe tying them off so they're out of the way, and then there's two sets of bolts you're going to undo. And you're going to systematically undo those bolts, explaining how, maybe take a couple pictures of that, and then you're going to remove the alternator and put it on the bench safely. You're going to explain that in reverse to get 20%. Finally, this is what's always missed, is cleanup. Did you clean up your work site when you were done? You explained at the beginning that there was some stuff on the ground and there was a little bit of messes that you had to clean up. Now you're going to show that you've cleaned it up and it's ready for the next job or the next person to take over that site. If you clearly depict that, you get full marks. Extras, another easy one to put in there. Did you put something fancy headers in? Did you do something above and beyond? Did you give a little bit of history of this alternator or this battery system? Did you do some voltage charging before you started and afterwards? Something in there to show you dug a little bit to get those extra marks. Doesn't take much to get that 10%. The final piece of this is feedback on an assignment. Instructors sit in their dark at night making up assignments, hoping that it'll be engaging and something interesting for the students that supports the material that they went over in class and supports the objectives. This is our only chance to ask you, was it a valuable project? Did it teach you something? Did you learn the theory from doing the project? And if not, how would you like to see it in the future? That is a report, an assessment report that you send back to us on Moodle that's worth 100%. Use the material. In here, it tells you everything we want. Address, take a highlighter, highlight each piece of it, and then go down, use your rubric, and then check that you covered all those pieces. And if you did, in foundations, you're getting 30%. In apprenticeship, you're getting 50% of your mark is based on this. And following these simple rules, following these simple procedures, it's easy to get 100% on these projects. If in doubt, ask your instructor how to get 100%, and he will help you with this. He might play this for you, or he might explain it to you.